Make that call.
Okay. We're not needed in the trust here.
We aren't needed. Got an app for that.
Okay, good evening. This is Huntley Community School District 158 Committee of the Whole meeting for March the 3rd. It is 6:04. Can we have roll call, please?
Mr. Gentry?
Here.
Mr. Guerin?
Here.
Mr. Troy?
Here.
Mr. Quagliano?
That's me. Yes, here.
Mrs. Melendi?
Here.
Mrs. Majorino?
Here.
Mr. Craig?
Here. Okay, if we can stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Here we have our chest.
Yeah, there we are. Right here, guys. Right here.
So hello, this is Chesapeake Elementary. We have some champs from Camp Chesapeake here tonight who love Lexia so much. They leveled up in February by meeting their reading program minutes. We know they're going to keep shamrocking it with Lexia during the month of March. They are Lily, Mia, Matthew, Nina. And one more. Sorry, Parker. Oh, good. Before we begin, Louie wants to tell a joke because he wanted to tell a joke tonight. You ready, Louie? Yeah. All right, go for it, Louie.
What did the elf say when he didn't get what he wanted for Christmas?
What?
Oh, well, oh, well.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all.
Beginning of your entertainment career, right?
Great job.
Oh, yeah, but he wants to.
That was great, Louis.
I'm just gonna grab one.
Nice job.
Okay, we're on to item 3, public comment. I have one public comment here. Kathleen Troutman.
I know you guys don't have any presentation, so, but I'll try to be respectful and keep it to the 3 minutes, but I might have some exciting news to share with you people, everyone. I wanted to take an opportunity, and sorry for the show and tell here, but if some people are not aware, these were the candles that were made by our special ed students, so I just wanted to, I have a more at home. So, thank you. Just wanted to make sure that people know that there was something that had some really strong momentum with this candle sale. And they were going to the farmer's market in Huntley. They were at Tom's Market. I think Mr. Eddings had them at before the pre-COVID over at the holiday fair when it was still at McGee. But I really wanted to take an opportunity tonight just to kind of go over a couple of things that we guys were talking about when it was coming to the light transition program, and just some thoughts and ideas. One of the things I wanted to share is when we were looking at the options of the Signal Union Special Property, something really stood out to me. And when we were talking and having the conversation, we were looking at indoor. How many meeting rooms do we need? What do we need to have an OT room, those type of things. But something kind of caught my eye, no discussion about what could we do on the outside. So as we look at this strategically in the future, could there be property around the building that we could use for a garden shop, greenhouses? So just something as a parent sitting back and just looking at, and there was something about the photo, the image that was up there, that just kind of caught my attention that when we're looking at this, we need to look at inside, but let's also maximize what we're doing from the outside as well too. So that was just one thing I wanted to share. And I know Dr. Rowe and Dr. Del Castillo that we still haven't had the meeting yet and would like to share these ideas certainly with that as well too, with other people to get input and thoughts on that. So that was just one thing. The other thing that was kind of discussed was like a storefront. And then also was asked about what was parent feedback. So let me just share with you just real quickly. Some of the concern from parents is just kind of the timing. I know that you guys are looking at a big ticket number, and parents definitely respect that. And looking at those options, I wish I could write you a check today and say, here, let's go and let's build it. Unfortunately, I haven't won the lottery yet to do that. But wanted to kind of talk to you about maybe is there an opportunity to get a storefront going first? And then with that, we could proceed with looking strategically at doing something larger or bigger. And some news I wanted to share with you is that I happened to find out that the village of Huntley is looking at building a facility or a building right next to the First Congregational Church in downtown, where the whole premise of it is to help small businesses. And it's actually kind of a precursor to help businesses come into Huntley that maybe haven't run a business before, but they want to have an opportunity to test it out and try it. So they're going to have about 10 units, and it's going to be hopefully right next to the First Congregational Church. So it'll be really close to Main Street, 10 units. And I wanted to make sure before I presented this to the board and to administration to even consider or to think about, is to make sure this is truly accurate. And if you look at the January 27th board meetings from the Huntley Village, bottom of page 8, you'll see this being discussed. They're talking about, they're calling the shops on Main Street, and it's a small business assistant program or a small business incubator. I guess some other towns around us are thinking of trying to do the same thing. It would be a 1-year lease, 12 by 12, 4-foot porch is what they talked about in the notes. This would be really a nice opportunity for our students with a 1-year lease. Definitely, I would try to bring your price tag down quite a bit to try to see if we could do something like that. And there could be funding, apparently, that was shared with me as well, too. So I'm hoping that maybe we could take this as an opportunity. And I didn't want to wait till the next board meeting because I really would like, or appreciate if the administration, someone could maybe look into this and make sure if it is an opportunity, that maybe we could be doing something where our students would have a storefront. The other thing I wanted to make sure that I shared with you is when we talk about storefronts, there is a program on Clairwoods Academy that's in Wheaton. Now, I don't know how many people have Facebook, but if you go onto Facebook, Clairwoods has a storefront called the Cardinal Shop. All the products in that store are from the students that are in that program. They're on Main Street in Wheaton. They get the traffic. So I just wanted to make sure that there are examples of other places that are trying to do a storefront, and maybe this might be an option or an opportunity that we can kind of maybe explore. But personally, I don't want to be going to the Huntley Village and speaking in public comment if it's something that we don't feel it's a strong option for us. I will advocate, you know what I will do in front of you, but also to the village if it's needed as a parent to help bring something to help our students in the program. So hopefully, if it's not new that you're aware of, I'm hoping I'm bringing something maybe new and maybe a strong opportunity. And please, Dr. Rowe, I want to make sure with the administration that we're following and finding out how we should be doing that to make sure it's something appropriate for our students. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. to item 4, which is a revision and adoption of the agenda. I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented. Second. From Mr. Gentry. Roll call on it.
Mr. Troy?
Yes.
Mrs. Melendi?
Yes.
Mr. Gentry?
Yes.
Mrs. Maiorino?
Yes.
Mr. Garin?
Yes.
Mr. Kratty?
Yes.
Mr. Quagliano?
Yes. Mr. Garin, curriculum and instruction.
Thank you very much. 5.1, the mid-year district data update. The doctors.
All of us, yes. Thank you so much. I'm just going to share my screen. And we are going to go ahead and get started. Dr. McCrindle and I are going to be sharing just a quick update, a mid-year snapshot. And I just want to give a little bit of background and a reminder as to why we're doing this now. We would not typically be sharing a mid-year winter data update. However, if you recall this year, we were not able to do our update in October because the state did not publish the results in October. So obviously we are tracking our data. We are looking at that for instruction, making sure that our students are moving forward. And we really did want to bring this here in the February-March timeframe just to do a quick snapshot. The other thing that we will be doing is when the state does finally release the entire report card, which we anticipate to be later in the spring, at least that's what we're told, at that point we would do the typical update that we would have done in October. So just wanted to kind of place this a little bit in the plan of the communication that you can expect to receive from us. So our objectives for this presentation tonight is really just to review a snapshot of some of our academic growth, fall to winter. So we're looking at our fall scores and then our winter scores on our benchmarking. And we want to focus also on our strategic plan measures. Now, in our last board meeting, you did hear an update on our strategic plan, just as to, are we meeting this measure? Are we on track? That sort of thing. But we've broken that down just a little bit so that we can take a look at grade levels and how they are progressing. We also wanted to take a moment to describe just a few action plans. For us, the most important thing about data is not necessarily just exactly what it says, but it's how do we respond? Because always we need to look at what do we do for our students next after we see those data results. So very quickly, you'll recognize some of these items. We are going to be focusing tonight on the STAR assessment, which is our benchmarking. So we have that in the fall, the winter, and the spring. And we will be sharing, again, just a snapshot of data from that STAR assessment as an example of how we can track our students' growth and see some really good growth in some areas. We also are going to be looking at that growth metric that our strategic plan is based on. And if you recall, that comes from our ECRIS system, from our ECRA data partners, using that individual statistical growth metric. So we are going to start, actually, just by reminding ourselves really how the strategic plan measures line up with how we approach improvement in the district. So strategic plan is big picture, it's the balcony, it's the umbrella. Then we have school improvement goals in every single one of our buildings. So they drill down. It's really just an aligned goal setting process. So our building school improvement goals align with our strategic plan goals. And then even more granular is our department goals, our PLC goals, our team goals. And so really the way that our strategic plan measures reach our students is through that aligned goal setting and then the action plans that happen there in the classrooms with that. Those bullet points on the right, again, are just a reminder of those strategic plan goals in reading and math, those overarching goals for the district. So when we look at the percent meeting the strategic plan target, you saw in the last update that we gave that we are on track to meet it for the end of the year. Our winter results were actually quite strong. So if you remember, the way that we calculate this is the statistical model is set each time we do an update that if we are making expected growth, 84% of our students will make either expected or high growth because the model continues to correct and project students forward based on where they've been. So what you can see in this table and where your eyes can go in this table is actually something of a celebration. It is quite typical that in the winter, we might not necessarily be seeing 84% in every grade level. It's unlikely that we'd be seeing necessarily over 84% because our students are still in process. You know, we haven't finished the year. Students learn at different paces.
we have seen extremely strong growth where you see many grade levels in reading and some in math that experienced greater than 84% of our students making expected or high growth, which really is showing us that as they've come back to school full-time into the scenario that we are this year, that they are growing at a greater than expected rate, which to us that is what we need to see, right? Because we were very, very committed to having those students make sure that if there were any learning gaps, we were addressing them. We do have a couple of grade levels at 83, which, like I said, would not be atypical in a given year, but we are looking at those very specifically on some of the action planning side. And this is, again, just an aggregate. So any individual student within these grade levels might be growing extremely quickly or might need a little boost. But when we looked at the overall, we are absolutely on track as a district to meet that strategic plan target. And this is just a little bit more granular looking at the grade levels. And so when we look at this, the next step for us is then to drill down a little bit and think about what are the skills that this is based on, where do we see the areas of strength, where do we see the challenges. But overarching, we were very, very pleased to see some of these areas where students were exceeding already even just in our winter benchmarking. To address just the middle school and high school first, and then I'm going to pass it over to Dr. McCrindle to speak a little bit about the elementary. This is our STAR growth, and we don't typically present, this is an internal data point, so we typically present our data as the aggregate using that growth model. But again, because this is an unusual year and we were unable to present in October, that data wasn't available, we did want, for transparency's sake, to be able to just share some of our growth data. So this is reporting on what percentage of students in the grade level for reading and for math met or exceeded a district benchmark. So it's, did a student meet a benchmark and are they over that line? And so what we're looking for when we look at this, and you'll see that there's some varying results, which we're digging into, is that we want to see that increasing. So in sixth grade, for example, by winter, an additional 8.2% of students met that benchmark. So that's the direction that we want to see it going. You'll see sometimes we've got some growth, but it might be a little bit smaller. And we've got a couple of grade levels there that we did see that a slightly smaller number of students met that benchmark in winter than fall, which we've absolutely sprung into action with some action planning and drilling down on that. It doesn't mean that an individual student did more poorly in winter than they did in fall, but just on the aggregate, there may have been some students that were close to that benchmark that reached it in the fall and didn't quite reach it in the winter because that benchmark moves. So when we're looking at this type of data, again, it's fairly big picture. It drills down a little bit more than that strategic plan measure did, but this is the next step at the building level relating to some of our building school improvement plans where they can start to drill in and see what they've done that caused some high growth. For example, when we look at math in seventh grade, we saw some fairly high growth, right? When we go from fall to winter. And then we see some others again where we want to spotlight what they did and then replicate it, and then some others where we need to intervene. So in terms of, oh yeah, go ahead.
The definition when you say district benchmark, I'm still not clear on what that means specifically.
It's set within the system. So statistically within just the STAR system, it's kind of like a meets and exceeds benchmark, like if you recall back to the old ISAT or IAR. And it's set within the STAR system based on our achievement and then compared to national achievement.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good question. Thank you.
Can I ask you,
Yeah.
even going back one further, the other one was the ECRA, right?
Correct.
Okay, that's the one that recalibrates itself?
Yes, it is.
Correct. So
Correct.
it would have been based on what was in the prior year, so help me out, because I don't remember prior year. Prior year wasn't anywhere near as good.
So the growth models, and we've worked pretty closely with ECRA on this on the statistical analysis side. So the ECRA model actually recalibrates every year. So when the students came into the pandemic, let's say there was an individual student that struggled during the pandemic, their individual projection might have calibrated a little bit down in terms of growth because they struggled that year. So what we need to see is them jumping forward a little bit more to make up for that, right? So in past years, we have seen, generally we make about 84% are either making expected or high growth. There have been some years at the end of the year, it's at an 83 or something like that. But the statistical model does keep recalibrating
Okay,
each benchmarking.
right, and the big deal on this piece is just at how high a percentage these are at currently.
Exactly.
And this is kind of where you'd expect it to be towards the end of the year.
Correct, exactly. And what we want to see is when it recalibrates higher again towards the end of the year, can we maintain this?
Right.
Absolutely. Yes.
And just to expand on that, sorry, a little bit more, in prior years, so 2019, 2020, which would have been pre-COVID, we were around anywhere between the 76th percentile and the 84th
Right.
across the board in all those grade levels. So
Okay, that
this
helps
is
perspective.
correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now, from a statistical standpoint, though, is the fact that last year being lower, does that kind of lower the threshold to the subsequent year?
It does, which is why we like to see that blue. Because, yeah, so absolutely, because it's calculated on individual student projections. So all of our individual students, if I had some gaps last year as a student, my individual projection would be recalibrated a little bit lower because of that, right? So that's why we need to see growing at greater than expected rates.
Being 84 and more is really
Exactly.
kind of the.
Yeah, on the aggregate, again, the important thing in terms of helping individual students is looking at those individuals, but as a district, this is really, I think, how we can look at that strategic plan target and say, yeah, we are absolutely kind of throwing a little bit ahead of where we thought we would be at this point in the year.
Okay.
Any other questions just about sort of the data pieces? And it is fairly big picture. We'll look at a better drill down towards the end of the year when that school report card's released. So like I mentioned, the important thing for us is to look at what are we doing? How are we responding to the data? How are we making sure that our student actions that we're taking to help our kids to intervene, to teach in the classrooms are going to either replicate and strengthen the things that are going well or address some of the areas of need. And at the middle school and high school level, we've got several pieces in place. Some of these we presented on at the beginning of the year as a plan, and you'll see that in the elementary as well, just a little bit of an update. So we worked on prioritizing our instruction based on the standards with a high degree of need. And what I will say is our department chairs have done an excellent job. So they set very targeted goals based on our STAR assessment for every grade level and in every subject area that it was available. And then we've just done some mid-year reporting on that to say how far have we gotten. And so those goals are based on skills needs, they're monitored. It's just a very systematic way to bring that aligned goal setting down to the team and the department level. And then I think those last two bullet points are very important. That skills-based practice, it's actually taking place on some of the resources that we had contracted for and the board would have paid for or we paid for with grants. Related to the STAR assessment, we are able to target individual student practice with the needed skills. And when we look at the grade levels, what we saw was that the grade levels that completed the highest degree of that practice saw those greatest gains. And so it's a very, very sort of simple line that we can draw and really working with some of those grade levels to say, okay, let's bump this up if we know this is helping our kids, let's keep focusing on that. Specifically in English, we had those two areas in English that we wanted to focus on, those two grade levels. They are really digging into informational text. So when we look at our standards, it's not as much literary standards or literature, it's more the informational text. And if you think about the industry that you might happen to be in, it's the informational text and the technical reading that happens in those industries that are harder for students. So that's an area that we'll be continuing to dig in on in our classes. And so this, again, high level, just kind of a summary. The thing that we talk a lot about in our teams is about just looking at the data, acknowledging it, analyzing it, and responding to it, making sure that we're taking action so that we can keep those results tossing forward towards the end of the year where we want to be. I'm going to toss it over to Dr. McCrindle to talk about the elementary side.
All right, so this next chart is similar to what you saw with the 612. It's set up the same way, looking at the STAR assessment and the percent of students meeting the district benchmark. That district benchmark is set around the 50th percentile across the nation, and then they give a 10% up or down, kind of where you go in between for that standard deviation. So it's between that 40th and 50th percentile. But you can see that our students have made very promising growth already this year. All of the grade levels in both literacy and math increased. And if you look at the percentage of students meeting in the winter, specifically over on the math end, we have in first grade 93% of our students meeting our district benchmark already, and in second grade 87%. And so we are very excited to see this data and to see this growth because it helps show that the work that our teachers and our building administrators and coaches and interventionists are putting into place with our students is working. So just like Dr. Switzer shared, we're going to go back to what our 3 goals were this year in response to our learning plans for elementary to help tackle our unfinished learning. The first one was prioritizing instruction. And we have been able to incorporate that research-based K-5 word study resources, which has helped us prioritize instruction around our early literacy skills. And it also has helped ensure some consistency at the tier 1 level across the board. We've also worked hard to leverage our instructional coach support to further help teachers streamline their own instruction and planning so they're able to prioritize and spend the time on what their students need. When it comes to small group, if you remember, we talked a little bit about win time beginning of the year. So that was that scheduled block of time within our elementary day that we added, which stands for what I need time. And so every student in elementary school receives at least 45 minutes for literacy and 30 minutes for math. And it's outside of our core instruction, but it's that time where our teachers can provide tier 2, tier 3, and enrichment supports. And so that has been going very well. And we've also been able to utilize some of our ESSER dollars to help provide resources that are research-based to support our students in that time, which we are excited to see in the growth in the data because we think that that correlates and connects. And then finally, Dr. Rowe talked about this at our last meeting as well, but that professional learning on the science of reading, we've been able to continue that with our staff. Our building admin team and the instructional coaches have done a great job finding ways even to be creative in providing that to our staff, either through their collaboration time, through PLC work, as well as our early release and institute days. And through that, what's been great is all of our staff are having this connected training and having that same foundational understanding of how we teach our kids to read, what those resources should be, how do we use the materials that we have here in Huntley, and what structures should be in place to help support them. So this comes on to just what comes next. As Dr. Switzer shared, the full Illinois state report card results are targeted to be released with all of the finalized statewide results on April 27th of this year. So then we'll be able to see our accountability measures from last school year compared to everyone across the state. Next month, or next board meeting, we are going to have an in-depth presentation on the BEST data, the behavioral emotional screening system, because we know that there's 2 sides to a child, our academic and also our social emotional learning side. So Dr. Del Castillo and her team will be presenting on that. And then we're going to continue to implement and monitor our action steps at the K-12 level. So with that, if there are any questions, we're happy to answer.
Any questions from anybody?
Waiting for the committee.
Anybody on the committee have any questions? No?
Okay, so, we talked, we did earmark in our latest teacher contract more collaboration time. You're not going to be able to parse through what's major contributing factors, but how would you measure how that's helped?
Yeah, at the K-5 level, it allows time for teachers to collaborate around tier 1 instruction to talk about what those practices should be. And I'd say it's at least an hour a week that our principals are able to dedicate to their staff having those conversations. We didn't always get to have those because it would have been if a teacher wanted to or teams, chose to. And so in my opinion, it's been very powerful in allowing that time to our staff to be able to use that. Our instructional coaches have also been able to push in and help support during that as well and be available to help them prioritize instruction and understand what we are teaching and all those different pieces. And so to me, it's been very valuable.
Then on your tier one intervention, it sounds like it's a little more real time as far as being able to identify. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah. For tier one, what we're really trying to do is we want to identify in the moment when a child is struggling so that we can help support that so that we don't end up with tier two, tier three issues and gaps to fill. And so our teams, I'm going to, I guess, pull up Martin Elementary just as one example. Their teams have really been working hard on using data to help design and collaborate around that and decide what a child needs right now, even if you're not in the MTSS process, but what can I help fill that gap in now so that we don't have issues in the future? And they use that when time for that piece specifically. So that when that tier one piece is essential because we all know at the end of the day, we don't all understand something, right? And so we want to be able to have that time to fix it right then in the moment versus letting it just build upon each other and cause issues in the past and the future.
Yeah, the immediacy of response time has got to be in that. The stuff's like too long.
Right. Yeah.
Other questions? Anyone on the board? Thank you very much for the presentation. Exciting stuff. Look forward to future updates on that as the year goes on. We'll move along to 5.2, the contract extension with Mathematics Institute of Wisconsin. Dr. McCrindle.
Yes, so last board meeting, we discussed our math review, where we are in our process for our K-12 math review. And this is a contract to extend that partnership with the Mathematics Institute of Wisconsin next school year. And so we have 3 different goals that we're trying to meet with them. One is for our math leaders who in K-5 who will be implementing illustrative math next year ahead of the rest of our teachers to provide them that support and coaching. Another goal is that we want to provide that training on just illustrative math and the materials. And then the third goal is to support that continued support for our K-12 instructional coaches and admin on the math practices and how they can help support that leadership of moving to that shift in math practices. And so what we have before you is what that contract would be. We do have plans to be able to use all our local funds along with some Title II federal dollars to cover the contract. And so we'd be asking to move it forward to the next meeting for approval.
Questions from anyone on the committee?
Yeah, just, one, that's kind of looking at the map of services, I don't know how else to describe it, or, but kind of what's being done when. How does that look, like as far as like one full resource a day and those training days? What does that one person envision to do? Is it group setting, individuals, or just a little more detail on that?
It is. So the one that you're talking about is, we're really excited about trying this model, but an actual representative from the Math Institute would be coming in and working with our teachers in the classroom. And so they'd be able to see the instruction, coach in real time, let the teacher be able to see that person teach the kids, and in the moment provide that professional learning for teachers and how to implement that math practice. And so we have that scheduled 3 times throughout the year, so they'd get to go to each teacher's room, and then other teachers would get to watch that and be able to learn from that, and then they'd have time to debrief and discuss and reflect on it.
So would that be like one person from the group making the rounds within the district?
Correct.
In that same day?
Okay. And then a couple, maybe 4 teachers might go into one person's room and see what they were doing. Then they'd all have time to sit and talk about what they learned and how they could apply that in their own room.
And that's actually a specific aspect of this that and Dr. McCrindle and Dr. Schlichter and I discussed at length. Is if you remember back 10 years ago now, was the implementation of Expert 21, which is a literacy curriculum at middle school level. The curriculum itself didn't pan out to be one that that we were particularly fond of, but the implementation of it was exceptional. And it had this expert from the company partner in our building, and the professional learning and the embedding of that professional learning and allowed us to really implement the program with fidelity across both of our middle schools. And we've talked about math in the last couple of years and not being pleased with the rate of growth that we're seeing in math, and we want to be sure we get this right. So this is a specific area to enhance the offerings of our professional learning. The addition that we have now that we did not have then is a comprehensive instructional coaching program that will be able to kind of walk side by side with these experts to then support that long term. And so that, we really want to be sure we get this right. This is, there are some significant instructional changes that are accompanying this math shift. Not only from support for our teachers, but we are expecting outcomes.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Troy, any questions? Anybody else on the board have any questions? If not, then I would recommend we move it forward to the next board meeting on the 17th and move to Finance Committee. Yeah.
Okay, Finance Committee, 6.1, our purchase orders, interest checks, payables, disbursements listed. Any questions or concerns related to those items in the committee?
Not here.
Ready, any, for the rest of the board? Okay, then we will move those forward to the board meeting for approval. 6.2 is monthly. Yeah.
6.1, would I make a motion in 2 weeks to move it as an action item?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
do it in 2 weeks or
Yeah.
now? Okay.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
just
so
don't
all
have
we're,
time to-
yeah, so all we're doing right now is,
Moving it forward.
as a
Okay.
committee, the three committee persons are deciding whether there's two of us who want to move it forward to the board
Okay.
to have a vote, and at that point, we can pull it from the agenda, or consent. Pull it for-
Make it a separate item. Okay, thank you.
6.2 is monthly fiscal update. Mr. Altmeyer.
Thank you very much. Just one item to note, other than what I have there, is the electric bus grant. We continue to work, on the planning and the purchase for the infrastructure needed for the 4 electric buses. We've been working with Kimley Horn, our engineering consultant, on a lot of different things, including the electrical engineering design, the traffic engineering design, civil geotechnical design. We're even looking into, as a site improvement under the transportation umbrella, the potential installation of additional solar. Because as a site improvement, whether it's the charging station or the fuel, the solar for our buses, those would all be eligible for reimbursement under the transportation reimbursement plan. So we want to maximize that opportunity if we can. We're also working with ComEd, which is a big piece, if you remember, when we went through solar, to make sure that the application for the interconnection agreement, is working. And we're looking at that because we're looking at charging stations as part of the grant, and I think we explained this at one of the previous meetings. As part of the grant, we've been approved for a specialized charging station, a more expensive charging station, but it's a charging station that will actually pull energy and fuel our buses in the middle of the night when the cost of energy is significantly low. And during the summer months, when these buses aren't being utilized, we'll have battery storage and we'll be able to sell that energy back to the grid, kind of like an arbitrage. Allowable type of arbitrage. Same thing we're doing today, We're buying and selling energy with ComEd with our solar array system. So we just need to make sure that the application for the interconnection and the tariff being used is all up and running before we just start implementing and adding these charging stations. So we need to cross our T's and dot our I's a little bit. So just wanted to bring the board up to speed on that. Next, whether it's next month or it's at the next board meeting, we'll provide a further update as to exactly where we are with maybe even site design, Because we have to modify the transportation lot a little bit to store these electric buses in a specific location. And we also have to allow ourselves, an opportunity to grow with electric buses, because there's $5 billion of DERA, Diesel Emission Reduction Act money that is out there, and grants, we're going to start writing grants for additional dollars to be received for buses. With this grant, with these 4 buses, we received the funding to cover 75% of the charging station, 75% of the electric bus. moving forward with the DARA grant, well, that's a 100%. They would essentially cover the cost of the whole bus. So we want to make sure we're building our infrastructure appropriately, just in case we want to add a few more electric buses to our fleet. So we'll give the board a little more information on that at the next meeting and/or in April. I'm hedging there a little bit if you can't tell. And other than that, that's the only thing I have on monthly fiscal update. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
I have nothing further.
Nope, I'm good.
Randy, you good?
I'm good. No.
Good. Going on to 6.3 is the revenue and expenditures report.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to report for the 7 months ended January 2022. We continue to trend within budget, especially on the, salaries and benefits. Certainly, we do have some outliers as noted in the dashboard, which we have noted for you. Health insurance for the month of January is actually 7%, 8% favorable versus the monthly average, and came down to $675,000 in claims versus the 7-month average of $724,000, and significantly less than, how we've been trending in December as well as last year at this time. I think we had well over $962,000 to claim. So we're actually having a fairly favorable year versus prior year for health insurance claims.
We're 7 months in, so we're only at about 50% of our budget, so.
Yeah. Right. And if you just look at the 7-month average, $724,000 versus last year's 7-month average of $726,000, well, we're flat with prior year, yet we budgeted a 5% overall increase on a $10 million line item. So we're doing pretty good on that. So knock on wood that our employees and dependents continue to stay healthy. On the dashboard, only one item I really want to point out. We continue to work with Health and Family Services on the Medicaid, because on our end, we continue to do the things we need to do to get that line item where we think it is. So we continue to put through the claims through the system. They're submitted. We're awaiting reimbursement, but our reimbursements are incredibly low, not versus prior year, but prior year was not a good year because of COVID, but versus the average of what we typically do. So we'll continue to keep the board apprised on that. But we think what we are doing on our end is actually more than what we did in 2019 and 20, and we're just not seeing those reimbursements, those checks, come back from Health and Family Services. So we will just continue to keep the board apprised on that. I have a passion for that one, so we will keep you apprised. Other than that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Through you, Mr. Craddy, anything? Anybody else? Not. 6.4, our revenue contracts. I think there's 2 fundraisers. Questions, concerns related to those 2 fundraisers.
The on the crowdfunding one, I know in the past, that seemed like there were some concerns with that. Just was curious how past experience has worked out with those type of fundraisers.
Yeah, we've had some success. If you recall, I think it was a few years ago, and correct me, Dr. Rowe, if I'm wrong, but I thought it was a few years ago we implemented a new policy surrounding crowdfunding and how to move forward in that kind of environment of fundraising.
I believe it was sparked by soccer too as well, or wrestling.
Yeah. So for these activities in their clubs, they seem to be going fairly well, and accomplishing obviously what the activity owners would like them to accomplish. So I don't think we've had any issues with them, and they've been fairly successful.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. If there's no concerns from anyone on those, we'll move those forward for approval. Board meeting. Step 5 is the audit engagement letter. Altmeyer.
Sure, yeah. The only thing to add there is, we've had our partner, Evans, Marshall & Peace, for a number of years. right? They've been doing the audit for a long time, and we continue to be very happy with their services. They're very timely. We work very well together. You know, if you've read the memo, they've kept our fees flat for the last 5 years, and they want to keep them flat for another 2 years. You know, I scratch my head a little bit at that, but at the same time, I know that, and Debbie's in the audience, part of, I think, what they're also doing is based on what we're providing them, and we have an exceptional team with Debbie and the whole finance team, really pulling together a tick and tie type of audit, and I think, you know, they want to keep our business, and so they are offering a 2-year engagement letter for fiscal year 23 and fiscal year 24, keeping the fees flat. And I would like to keep them on board.
I agree. I would commend them for being able to keep their fees flat, because I can tell you that's not what our firm has done. We've gone up 5% this year on all our audit fees, so
Yeah.
I would tell you it's a really, really good deal from a really good firm who's provided us outstanding quality and service on my end. So I don't know how you guys feel about it, but
Just a curiosity question. I mean, I think I guess the answer to Tony's question is, you know, everything's been really smooth and, you know, timely, accurate, all the good stuff, so no issue at all with the firm. The one question I was curious about, I didn't quite, when I read through it, if the cost not to exceed 33, have we ever had a situation where they have gone under that fee?
No, not under, but I don't think over as well. I think, you know, we have received, you know, the annual invoice at $33,600 for the last several years. It's never been under. Normally they write it that way, but that's the case.
no, I mean, that's
After the audit is complete, they send over the invoice, and generally, you know, depending upon timing, they would send another engagement letter as well, based on the contract, but it's never been over.
No, but I do think there's a lot of truth in the notion of smooth audits and repeat audits get more efficient, so that helps them keep the cost level, so it's a good testament.
Yeah, and they've had the same manager, partner, running the engagement for years, although we do have new staff every once in a while, and the new staff kind of creates a little learning curve, but we're the type of client they like to train new staff on, because we keep it easy.
Right.
Yes, I would guarantee you guys are probably the best, as far as what you provide. They're able to just do a true audit as opposed to having to make adjustments themselves.
Rather than bookkeep.
Right, exactly. Correct. Yeah, so in my opinion, it's a pretty solid deal. I would just tell you, if it were raw cost, type of audit, this is a bargain, but it's very fairly priced. Yeah. All good? Moving it forward. Moving forward. Our board meeting for approval. On to 6.6, which is the transportation bus fee.
Thank you very much. Well, you know, I love presenting this because we just continue to get greener and greener. Seems like the last few months with the electric bus award, as well as now the recommendation to move forward with additional propane buses. We held our bus bid on January 27th, 2022, and we had 2. This year, we only asked for propane. You know, in prior years, the bus bid went out and we had an alternate for propane, and we asked for diesel as well. But we now know moving forward that we are happy with our propane bus fleet, and we want to continue to move in that direction. You know, less maintenance, you know, better, more fuel efficiency, and certainly it's the right thing to do, and I think we need to continue to keep driving forward with our green initiatives and sustainability efforts. That said, for the last several years, we've only had 2 bidders, and that's Midwest Transit Equipment and Central States Bus Sales. Last year, Central States is Bluebird, and last year we went with Bluebird. They were the lowest bidder, and we purchased 10 of their propane 77 passenger buses at approximately, I have the number here, $95,000 per bus. If you read the memo today, well, Midwest Transit slightly outbid Central States, and that's okay, both Midwest and Central States have, we have both of those buses in our fleet, and both are working very well for us. But as you'll see, well, the price of the bus went significantly up, from $95,000 to approximately $113.7 thousand or $114,000 per bus, which is almost a 19% increase in the cost of the bus. And in today's supply chain and the cost of materials and labor that they are incurring, as you can see, both Midwest and Central States had a similar type of increase or more to their purchase price of bus year over year. That being said, we would still like to make the recommendation to move forward, because we do have an aging fleet, but rather than purchase 10 buses, right, the bid was up to 10 buses, based on the capital budget that we have in the transportation fund at $1 million, we would like to administration would like to make a recommendation to the Board of Education to purchase 9 propane buses totaling $1.056 million. As part of that bid, and we've talked about this at previous meetings, they have also offered us $2,000 trade-in value on the buses that we would trade in. Now, these buses won't be manufactured and delivered. Typically, it's July or August. Do we know that yet? Super. You want to step up to the mic, maybe? I didn't grab that information yet as to expected build date. Oh, is it?
Yeah. Yeah, Bluebird has an 8-month out build time, and IC buses from Midwest is end of June, is what they're saying.
So it's typical.
Typical, yeah.
So for the buses that we're recommending with Midwest Transit, they typically deliver these buses in June, July timeframe. I'd hope that we could purchase all 10, maybe with some favorability in the transportation fund, and we do have salary favorability and maybe some benefit favorability, but we've got a lot of other needs within the transportation fund from contractual transportation and other things as a result of COVID, that favorability is not there. So my recommendation is to hit or very close to the budget of $1 million and approve 9 additional propane buses moving forward. I was talking about the trade-in value, and the reason I was talking about the trade-in value, I'm not asking the board to approve the trade-in value, because we don't know if we need some of those some of those trade-in buses, they're 2009 diesel buses, because if we are awarded additional
DARA grant.
Right, DARA grant, Diesel Emission Reduction Act, part of that grant is you need a 2009 or 2010 bus to trade in and destroy.
To destroy the
Right.
engine.
So we don't want to give away all our 2009s for $2,000 when they're fairly valuable, especially if they will help us solicit some additional dollars for to enhance our electric bus fleet. So we don't need to make that decision until June or July time. Really, this recommendation is just for the purchase of the 9 additional propane buses at $113,775.
Yeah, I think that's, from a financial standpoint, you back off a little with these kinds of price increases. But my question would be, where does that put us fleet-wise numbers? So, okay? Or-
Yeah, no, we'll be fine. If we reduce it to 9,
Yeah.
we'll be fine, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that would bring our propane fleet to 33 or 34?
34,
34.
yes.
Okay. So, a good portion
Nine's
of our
okay,
fleet.
it's not okay.
Pardon? I like that.
It's okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
But you're looking for 9.
We're looking for 9. And so we'll modify that recommendation. If the board agrees, we'll modify that recommendation within the board report 2 weeks from now.
Okay, well. For Mr. Craddy, beyond.
Just to make sense and very forward-looking, so appreciate the proactive thought.
Anybody, rest of the board have any questions on bus purchase? All right, I think we're good. We'll go forward.
Improving Midwest Transit is
And Midwest Trend, yes.
is the award winner.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
On the 7, which is the HR committee, Mr. Gentry.
All right. First item up is 7.1 monthly, HR update report. Dr. Zerich.
Yeah, just a few updates, with the HR department. With the HR department, for February, I'm going into March. And we have some deadlines that we have to meet according to school code, when it comes to, getting seniority reports to the 2 unions and also presenting those honorable dismissal lists. So, we will have all those reports, to the unions on time. Also, in the month of March, we process non-renewals. So just a note at the next board meeting, you will see non-renewals and kind of a long personnel report because we add all the extracurricular non-renewals. That is business as usual. We do that every year. So I want to make the board aware of that. I'm currently still evaluating staffing levels and enrollment 22-23. And we have kind of shifted gear to start staffing and recruiting for next year. Actually, 100%. We're looking to fill positions now for next year. A couple of recruiting events coming up. One next week that's statewide, that is online, and then one towards the end of the month down in Downers Grove that's going to be in person. So we will be out looking to fill some of the positions that we have open.
As far as that event, more like a job fair type setup, or?
Yeah, the Illinois Association of School Personnel, this is the first time they've done a statewide virtual job fair. So we've gone in and we've created a booth, and our booth sits out there online, and on March 8th at 3 o'clock it goes active, and folks can virtually through text, video, many different options, communicate with us. And so we've created a booth that's got our introduction video out there, obviously our website, our job postings and everything. And then Dr. Del Castillo and I will be going to a bilingual recruiting event down in Downers Grove at the end of March. So one in person, one virtual. This is the first time for that virtual one, so it'll be interesting to see how it goes. But what's kind of neat about it, our booths are already out there, and candidates are already looking to see who's there, and we've had some folks reach out in advance. So we've been able to do some, at least phone screenings with individuals before the event's even happening.
Good.
And that's it for the updates.
Okay. Any questions or comments from anyone? All right, then, next item up is 7.2, MOU.
And so this memorandum of understanding would be between the HEA and HESPA, and it's for COVID leave. So it would be for the individual employee that would test positive for COVID, or we would isolate with the current mitigations. They wouldn't have to use their sick time. They could put in for COVID leave, and that doesn't take away from their accruals, and they would still be paid. With the numbers we have right now, this really isn't going to impact very many individuals. But on that occasion, where we do have someone testing positive and we're still isolating them for those 5 days, they could put in for that COVID leave.
Okay. Well, add to the knock on wood for good health that Mark started.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, any questions on that? Not, we'll move that forward for approval. And that will bring us to item 8, building and grounds, Mr. Troy.
Thank you. I'm with Mr. Rankosik not here. I'm not sure if anyone can speak to any of the O&M updates that he's got in his memo.
Yeah, I can update the board on a few of them that I think are worth kind of highlighting within his memo.
Thank you.
I'd be happy to do that. I think one, we've been talking in the last several months about the pavement improvements at Marlow Middle School. So this past week, he met with a very large group for a pre-bid meeting regarding that project. So that project continues to move forward, and had a very good meeting this past week regarding the pavement improvements at Marlow Middle School. Another very big one is, and I'm not sure if Doug has mentioned this in the past, but I think it's been part of his memo, is we continue to work with the Energy Systems Group, ESG, on the evaluation of energy conservation opportunities. And I know he's got a lot of different things listed here, from lighting improvements indoors at Cheswick Elementary and Huntley High School, right? Those are the two schools for which we are not yet, right? We don't have LED throughout the whole system at those two buildings. Also looking at developing a facility assessment of Cheswick Elementary and Huntley High School, and just identifying other energy conservation improvement opportunities. What we also have them looking at, and we both met with ESG this past week as well, is within regard to all the chillers that we have, right? I mean, you've heard Doug talk about the cost of Freon, and every time he has a meeting, he tells you it went up another 10%, or now it's at $1,200 or $1,300, it's getting high. And certainly, a lot of our chillers that we do have, they have subsystems. They have sub-units that, as part of a chiller replacement, we need to replace all of those sub-units. And so we're working with Energy Systems Group to really understand what's available out there and what are the designs available to bring in not only energy efficiency, but a design that'll work for us, right, under the new standards, so that we're not utilizing, obviously, that old Freon. So we're working with them, but the cost, well, it's a big cost, because we got a lot of subunits and the chillers are incredibly expensive. So at a future meeting, we will have a discussion, probably just regarding that topic, and a strategy, right? A strategy for how are we going to cover that cost financially, right, over a period of time? Do we finance it? Do we pay for it outright? Do we use, the replacement reserve? Because these are big dollars. Certainly, we may be able to, portion it out year after year, but we'll have to probably give up something, whether it's completion of the roof replacement areas over at the high school, or we pause a little bit on asphalt replacement based on the capital budget dollars that we have for operations and maintenance on an annual basis. So that'll be a discussion in the future once we kind of get our arms a little bit more around what we need regarding chillers and the subsystems, primarily, I believe, at the middle school.
So, Doug has that rolling, 10-year maintenance. Those chillers obviously are identified. Is there any serious deviation from the cost it estimated in his plan?
Great question. No, I don't think so. But I think right now those are sitting out here.
Staring at it in the eyes and going.
Right, over the last several years, now we're seeing this huge increase in Freon costs. And so the fear is we're going to be forced to make a decision, right? And we're not going to have time to plan it, because if one of those chillers goes down and it's in the month of August, we might have a problem. Okay. It's a very big building. So we'll continue to have discussions with the Energy Systems Group as well as the board to bring you up to speed. But from an operations and maintenance update, I wanted to provide that to you. Other than that, I think I talked about what we're doing with the EV charging stations and the electric. Doug has been great on that. We continue discussions with Verigy. Verigy is now CTS. Right? They took over the CTS group, and we continue to look with them to provide a service contract extension on our HVAC controls and systems, and maybe even recommissioning some of those systems. So also stay tuned on that. Other than that, I think those are the big updates for operations and maintenance. And Doug did want me to tell you that he was going to provide you a solar financial update for ComEd again. So, if I fell down, they don't have the information. It's always up and down with ComEd. So until you get it, we'll let you know. We'll get it to you just as soon as possible.
Thank you very much for the update. I think we'll just keep moving ahead then. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Trey.
Okay, on to
Keep moving on.
Okay, move on.
legislation, 9.1, legislation updates. There's a few bills out there right now, but the one that kind of caught my attention was the SB 3983 and the 5060. It makes changes to the three probationary periods pertaining to achieving tenure. So allows a teacher to obtain tenure after 3 years rather than 4 consecutive school years in which they achieve at least a proficient. Allows a teacher to obtain tenure after 2 rather than 3 consecutive school years in which they achieve an excellent. And then the third one would allow a teacher to obtain tenure after 2 consecutive school years in which they achieve at least a proficient rather than excellent evaluation rating, provided they had earned tenure in a previous district and had proficient ratings for the previous 2 years.
You know, I'd love to provide a little context in terms of some of the conversation. This was a bill that, to be totally transparent, I opposed on behalf of the school district and support, and as did, I believe, ISA and LUDA. And it's not so much that we want to make it harder for a teacher to obtain tenure. It's we don't believe that a one-off bill ought to dictate how tenure is obtained. That's a part of the para committee that Ms. Lombard, Dr. Zier, and I were all a part of in this district, and it was a collaborative group on how our district functions. And there was a greater committee statewide that built that system. And for a one-off bill to just arbitrarily change that, probably with good intentions of maybe strengthening the teacher workforce, of seeing that protected labor and a faster way to attract more teachers. I don't believe that'll be the case. I believe it's reducing our standards of quality across the state. And I believe that our PR committee most likely would have opposed it, is my guess. I don't know where it's going to go, but I agree with you. It's one of concern. And if you share that concern, I would recommend you reach out to our local representatives. I've already done so on the district's behalf, but I don't know the status of it, where it's going to go, but it's one of concern. So that we're kind of caught in that spot of we want to help, but we don't want to help at the same time of reducing the quality of our profession. And that probationary period is a very important one where you're genuinely learning how to teach. And, you know, I shared a story of, it wasn't really until year 3 when you start to see brand new teachers, things really slow down for them. And understanding how to truly function and begin to take major strides in the classroom. And if we have to have that figured out by then, on our end, I hate for the district to be in a position where we have regrets about decisions that we made with our kids at stake. So that's why we're in opposition to that. I appreciate you bringing that up, but I agree with you.
And so what about the last element of that bill did sound reasonable, though, where you had somebody coming from another district who had achieved efficiency in a couple of years in another district, and it sounded like it was allowing them to achieve.
They already have something like that in place. It's called tenure mobility.
Yeah.
So I didn't catch the detail of that one. I don't know if they're updating to that, but there's folks that can do that when they come to a district. They have to request it like within 90 days. We haven't had anyone.
The only difference is that they can achieve at least a proficient rather than excellent.
Rather than the excellent. So that still exists, but it has to be the excellence.
Any other questions?
The only thing I would bring up that there's a much like the MOU that Dr. Zier presented to. There's a bill on the floor that actually passed the House this week that would not only grant administrative leave for sick days if you have COVID as an employee, but also retroactively go back to the beginning of the school year. All signs point to it's a done deal. There's no intervention. We're not necessarily opposed to it, other than from a state level. It's going to, we don't have a strong feeling about it one way or another. It was just kind of the governor and the unions made a deal. The deal that was made was it would only apply to those teachers that are vaccinated. So it'll be a lot of legwork for our HR office, but our understanding is it's imminent.
Yeah, Yeah, we have a process ready to go. We just need to see the ins and outs of, what it looks like and who it applies to exactly. But I've created a process for folks to, I guess, apply, to get those days back. But it's going back to August, it's gonna take a little bit of legwork to get all that, upload it back into the system, communicate with the employees. So, we'll get it done though.
Yeah. If I can add just really quickly, last week I was contacted by some lobbyists, the Illinois ASBO and IASA lobbyists, because there was some language added to that bill. And some language added to that bill, for support staff, and paying support staff for emergency days, as well as, right, so if they were out on an emergency day, and this may not affect us, but it affects a lot of other districts that have had a lot of emergency days, and then also pay them again at year end when those emergency days were made up. And so that was a very hot topic. So we worked with the lobbyists, worked with IASA, and they did rewrite that language. So that is no longer in there, just in case anybody heard that.
Yep, anything else? Moving on to 10, Board of Education.
We have some minutes laid out there. Does anybody have any questions concerning those minutes? Board meeting for approval, and then we're on to 10-2, Dr. Rowe, your update. Just a moment. All right, we'll be ready.
So at last month's board meeting, I presented to you an adjustment to our decision-making process in handling COVID. After 2 years, we've learned quite a lot in terms of how we can intervene and mitigate the virus and ensure that we maintain a healthy environment. And as you'll see, if you saw the CDC updated guidance, we received a pretty firm affirmation in the direction that we were heading when the CDC's guidance reflects pretty strongly what we were proposing that we do moving forward, taking a more holistic approach. So I want to walk through and remind you of that decision-making model. I'm going to walk through and talk about the updated CDC guidance, update you on where things stand today, and then in just a handful of slides, kind of talk about some of the kind of our path forward. So you have an updated Forward Together in-person learning plan in front of you. As you thumb through that, you'll notice the reason we gave you the copy is all of the mandate language has been removed. So the action that we'll be requesting that you take at the February or March 17th board meeting will be to make this truly a local decision, as all of the state mandate language has been removed. So when the mask became strongly recommended in the district, you know, it's gone extremely smoothly for us. There have been small pockets of transitional bumps that I think are completely understandable and to be expected, but it's gone very smoothly. One of the things that does stand out is the removal of masks. A lot of people feel as if that means, you know, everything's over and it's a free-for-all. And I just wanted to walk through and remind you of there are many layers that we do have that are still firmly in place. As the CDC, IEPH, and our local health department have taught us, removing these mitigations one at a time and then waiting a period of time to monitor the effects of the removal of that mitigation are important. So just as a reminder, the things that we still have in place, physical distancing of at least 3 feet are in place in our schools and in cafeterias to the greatest extent of our ability. The free shield testing is available, yes, as the masks have come off and the quarantining of healthy students have gone away. Those numbers have begun to decline, but they are still in place for anyone who wants to use them. And Binax Now is also in place. If a student or staff member has symptoms, they have the ability to go to the nurse's office and in 15 minutes confirm it's COVID or it's not, and they might be able to stay depending on what those symptoms are. Hand sanitizing stations are all over our buildings and all the rooms. routine cleaning and disinfecting in line with the CDC guidance is in place. Enhanced, now, and that routine disinfecting of high-touch surfaces is over and above what is normal in a school district. So it's over and above the high-touch surfaces every single night. Enhanced filters at a great cost to the district, but one that is maybe one of the more important mitigations we have in place, ensuring an increased volume of fresh air going through those enhanced filters, or ensuring that the air in our building is recirculated with outside air very frequently and filtered at a high level. And obviously encouraging our students to stay home when they're showing symptoms. Nothing about our plan is going to change the fact that if you test positive for COVID or you have symptoms, you're still going to be isolated for 5 days at home before you may return, and then that monitoring is in place. None of that's changing. So the big change, the major positive for our system is a close contact who is not symptomatic does not have to quarantine. That's the best thing for our educational environment. The masking, we are currently in a strongly recommended state because that is the last action that the school board took at that special meeting that we had following the initial TRO. So the approval of this plan, if you approve that on the 17th, would firmly make this a locally controlled plan, and you'll see some adjustments to some of that language on a sliding scale. The newest adjustment that you're all aware of through our communications is the CDC has updated that masking is no longer mandated on school buses, so we are in that strongly recommended status on our school buses as well. So look at the guidance. With the new updated, more holistic approach to how we're monitoring and determining levels of transmission in our communities, the CDC now has McHenry County in a low community level of transmission. And reason being is through that more holistic approach, they're looking at these highlighted areas on the chart. So the new COVID cases per 100,000 people in the last 7 days, so they're looking at the number of new cases, new hospital admissions per 100,000 people in the last 7 days, and then the percentage of staff inpatient beds that are then occupied are those things. So it's really a focus on the number of positive cases and the impact it's having on our hospital systems for our healthcare workers to take care of us. And again, as I said, that reflects some of the decision-making that we've had. So in a low-level community spread, the CDC is recommending access to vaccines that are readily available for everyone 5 and older. And as the president stated in the State of the Union earlier in the week, it sounds like 6 months plus is pretty close to being requested again. A request was initially instituted and it was pulled back for some reason. It sounds like we're on the verge of that happening again. Access to COVID-19 testing is widely available. Our shield testing, again, is free and accessible to anyone who wants it. And then maintain our ventilation systems in our schools. The options of, like I said, the strongly recommended mask environment is where we currently live. So one of the proposed changes to our sliding scale is we really wanted to move away from a triggering event. When we hit this metric, the entire district will shift to this action and make it a more holistic view. So what you'll notice is if we're in the green, in the low risk, where the county currently is now, we would shift to a mask optional environment for students pre-K through 12 and light. And then our COVID-19 shield testing is available for all. If we transition and the county bumps us to the moderate, and we as a school district, based on our holistic view of what's happening in our school district in conjunction with those county metrics, we move to that moderate level, we'll shift to a recommended masking environment and shield testing remains available. And then if we shift into the high-risk category, we'll shift to that language of strongly recommending masks, shield testing available, and then we'll find out our opportunities to expand our classroom spaces and lunch spaces. Obviously, we will communicate with our families if we make any of these adjustments, so everyone is on the same page and knows which category we are in. Decisions to move between these zones are made based on that district decision-making process. I'll actually explain again in just a moment. And the structure allows us to be removed one at a time. And like I said, take some time and monitor the impact of that change and determine if it's had an effect. For instance, as you'll see, masks were removed. We're 3 weeks into that, and our numbers have actually gone down. So right now, that removal of that mitigation is not showing a negative effect on the school district. The structure also reframes our decision-making process so that, like I said before, we don't trigger an action with one single thing. It's more of a holistic view as we're shifting and learning with this virus. So again, that decision-making process, we're going to look at active positive cases in our school district. We're going to look at in-district positivity rate. We're going to look at the strain on our schools. Omicron had a major strain on our staffing and substitute rates. When our staffing rates were the lowest in terms of the number of staff that had COVID, it just so happened that our fill rates were down like in the 30% on a daily basis. Dr. Zier came in to the office on Monday or Tuesday and said we've got a 95% staff attendance rate today. It's an easy day in the HR office in terms of staff being at work. So our staff are healthier, staff are here, and our sub rates have been upwards of 70s and 80% each day, which is a very positive sign. We'll also be monitoring the community transmission, the county vaccination rates, and then the strain in our hospitals. We maintain a very strong relationship with Northwestern Huntley Hospital, speak with them very regularly, and as their admission rates and the strain in the hospital go up, Carla and I speak pretty regularly, and we'll be aware of what's happening in our community in terms of the strain in the system, so we don't add to that. So of course, as I said, any change will be communicated, but it's important to note any change in our mitigation zones would be a district-wide change. There was a brief discussion of whether it should be school by school, because some schools can see an increase when others don't. We felt that might do more harm than good in terms of confusion, and it's better just to, especially if you have a child that's, Conley and Heinemann, and Heinemann doesn't have to change, but Conley needs to be masked or needs to, do something different. It wouldn't be good for the family. So we were going to do it district-wide if we make a change. Our current rates of positivity, you'll see we currently have 14 active cases in the school district, students and staff, which gives us a very low positivity rate. Our community transmission sits at about county-wide at incidence rate of 116. That has been slowly coming down. It was about 250 several days ago. They're a week in arrears, so that the number is actually probably lower than that now. We experienced several times throughout this pandemic, which became very frustrating, but especially when we saw dramatic decline as Omicron was working its way out of the area, and then there was a data dump, and our numbers went back up by to a 300 incidence rate, which didn't correlate to what we were seeing. So that was the reason why. There's a lot of institutions that are supporting supplying this data, and then you can see our the vaccination rates across the county continue to improve. A little slower here of late, but hopefully that will continue to increase. So our next steps, obviously, this is a slide you saw last month. We've learned quite a bit about this virus and how transmissible it is, and who is at greater risk than others. Vaccines are widely available to anyone who wants it 5 and older. Our classrooms remain some of the safest places that you can be with the mitigations that I described earlier. And the CDC's most up-to-date guidance did reflect the decision-making model that we shared with you last month. So we've had an extremely positive couple of weeks in the school district, and we're eager to move forward and focus on the final stretch in the school year, and have big plans for how we're going to continue to bring back some of the normalcy and some of the celebrations and some of the traditions that make school a very fun place to be, and some of the memories that our kids have, and really bolster their mood. So, but before I conclude, I just have 2 more slides. I want to talk about kind of what are the next steps forward of things that we're thinking about. We met, this week, and we're prepared to bring our volunteers back into the building, from parents into class parties to volunteers from the community that come and read with our kids or support some of the some of the interventions and listening to them read for fluency. We're excited to do that. That sense of community in our elementary schools is one that is very special. So, but I put this up here just so you could, just so you could see. We did tighten in terms of the processes to ensure that anyone's coming in is very aware of what our environment is and very aware of the expectations of them if they're going to be in our environment. So they'll follow the exact same guidelines of our students and staff in terms of understanding where we are in masking optional through strongly recommended. And we have a specific communication that would go out to them with expectations of them and some recommendations of how they can work with a student or work with small groups and understanding spacing and distancing since they haven't been in the buildings, just so that they can kind of, and it really is what it's about. It's really about respect, and respect of the person that you're working with, and respect of the person that you're around. And what I've seen in our buildings in the last couple of weeks has been, an adult who is opted to come to work and work without a mask, goes to a small group with a group of kids, and a child has a mask on, and that mask is typically going on with the adult. It's not everywhere, but I'm seeing that by and large, and the conversations I'm having with some of the adults in the district is that seems to be a common sense plan that most people are carrying through, which I think is great. If someone, based on the level of comfort of the person that you're working with, and respecting their space, that they can feel comfortable in the environment that they're in. So that's the short term. This is the long term. And before I say our cafeterias at the elementary level, kids are still eating in the classrooms. They have 6 feet of space. And I think that's important to understand that some of our students that are choosing to be masked, this is a primary reason why we're going very slow on this one, is that's when their guard comes down and the mask comes off, their level of comfort. In middle schools, we're at least 3 feet with desks in the cafeteria and commons area. In the high school, we're still spread out into the gym as well as the commons. It's not that 3 or 6 feet, but it's to the best of our ability. So long term, we do have our eye on that possibly being one of the mitigations we might remove before the school year is over with, but we're not committing to a timeline as to when that will happen. We want to, like I said, we'll remove one at a time and kind of see how things go. But it is one that we are looking at. It could happen toward the end of the school year. As things get warmer, and we are, as long as we're continuing in the direction that we are. So I just wanted to communicate and be transparent and open about the things that we're talking about how we'll move forward for the remainder of the year. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. But to be clear, the request to approve the plan would be covering local decision, removing all state mandates in our plan, the decision-making model, as well as the masking from optional to strongly recommended language in our plan. If there are any questions, I'm happy to address them.
I just have a quick question. Back on the this one with the low risk, moderate, and high risk. You said that we're right now at low risk based on McHenry County's community level. But then you also said that we're going to make that decision locally. Is there ever a scenario where perhaps McHenry County could be at a moderate, but we're still at a low risk? And if so, what would we do then? Is that our decision?
It is our decision, and I think I think that would be an unlikely scenario.
Okay.
Because the trends that we've seen over the last couple of years, and Dr. Budzinski and I have dived into this data of our incidence rate in district has been within like 3 or 4 of the county for at least the last several months. So, but there is the possibility that the county rate could spread in the northern part of the county, and our numbers in the district are just not there. And I think that language is there to preserve our ability to say, if we're not seeing it in our schools and our greater community, that our kids are more likely to get it out in the community and bring it to school, then we want to maintain the appropriate level. That's why we look at it as one piece of the puzzle. But that being said, it's pretty unlikely that the county would be in one and we would be in another.
Okay. I just want to make sure, and if so, that we have the ability to have our own control.
Correct.
Flexibility. And then, I don't know if it was in here.
The emergency rules With the emergency rules,
Right.
we're not under the purview of those emergency rules. It's truly local control for the first time.
Okay. And my other question was, IHSA, are they,
Well, currently, IHSA, what was happening in the playoffs, here was it was a local decision for the home schools, kind of what our conference decided. So if the home school was, mask mandatory at the time, you would abide by whatever that home school was doing. In the playoffs, until the mask mandate was lifted, IHSA was mask required. So in the current situation, and this woman and I just talked about this week, we don't have a team left in the playoffs currently, or basketball would be, in wrestling is so we won't have that issue right now, but the mask mandate being lifted, IHSA has not communicated anything to us since the mandate has been lifted. But moving forward, in the spring, indoor track is the only thing we have going on now, and we're under a mask, optional mask recommended environment inside our field house. We've had, a couple of track meets just this past weekend, boys and girls both at home and in our field house, and it was they felt comfortable with.
okay, thank you.
But we are still waiting IHSA to take a formal communication. But I assume with, we're moving forward with the expectation the mask mandate has been lifted, therefore IHSA will just continue to follow that. IDPH does have yet to adopt the CDC guidance and issue their version of it. Not sure what they're waiting on, but we're moving forward.
Well, they don't have a.
They don't have a director.
They don't have a director right now.
They're on tape delay.
Thank you.
Oh, you have anything? Would like to charge. Kevin, you have anything?
No, good.
Good. Good. Phil is good. I think we're good. I think we're, things worked out well. I think, Dr. Rowe and your staff, you had the foresight at the time you did, decisions, emergency meeting that, led us down a path that, ultimately proved to be the right path to be on. Saved us our district, a lot of hassle and aggravation, at a lot of levels, other districts have been doing, so I appreciate everything you guys did to have the courage to move forward in that direction at that time. The rest of the board for having foresight and fortitude to want to move that quickly at that time. We all saw what happened in the preceding week, 10 days, that the calamitous meetings and events and fallout that happened in all these districts that I think we pretty much avoided. So I thank the staff for, executing and going along with it. A lot of feel good about just how everybody did move forward together, the plan there. In this circumstance. So far so good. Let's keep our fingers crossed. Keep moving forward in this direction. So everybody's fine moving forward with this station at the 17th meeting. Very good. That said, we're on to item 11, closed session. We do have closed session. We do. Okay. Therefore, I'll make a motion to move into closed session at 7:37 for the items enumerated in the agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Guerin. Can we have roll call, please?
Mrs. Melendi?
Yes.
Mr. Gentry?
Yes.
Mrs. Maiorino?
Yes.
Mr. Guerin?
Yes.
Mr. Troy?
Yes.
Mr. Praddy?
Yes.
Mr. Quagliano?
Yes.
This is a normal meeting.
If anything.
First.
Fun. The first.
Where is it? We had like 2019, right?
Only
I couldn't go there.
That's
shocking.
I get no idea.
Okay, we're back,
I love that place.
from closed session. It is, 9:11. Can we get roll call, please?
Yeah.
Mrs. Melendi?
Here?
Mr. Gentry?
Here?
Mrs. Maiorino?
Here.
Mr. Guerin?
Here?
Mr. Fatty?
Here.
Mr. Troy?
Here.
Mr. Quagliano?
Here. Okay, no action, so I'll make the motion to, close out
Then I found something better.
meeting at 9:12. Can I have a second?
Second.
Second from Ms. Melendi.
Get away from it.
Roll call, excuse me, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned.